How many times had I endured such cutting remarks? It seemed as though my worth was constantly questioned, my abilities scorned. I had entered into marriage with sincere affection, believing in the promise of happiness together. But as time wore on, that love faded into the ether. Instead, my husband's authoritative demeanor grew more pronounced with each passing day, burdening me even with the care of his own mother. I found myself teetering on the precipice of both physical and emotional exhaustion. If this trajectory persisted, I feared for my sanity. Yet in my darkest moment, an unexpected beacon of support emerged. My own mother-in-law, the very person whose care had become an additional weight on my shoulders. I'm happy to rewrite it for you. My name's Mary Wagner, and I'm 30 years old. After finishing university, I landed a job at a publishing company. However, I bid farewell to my career upon tying the knot, embracing the role of a full-time housewife. Friends often express their envy, assuming I must lead a charmed life. How fortunate you are to be a homemaker. Your husband must be quite successful, they remark. But the truth is, my married life lacks the joy they envision. In fact, it feels more akin to a descent into the depths of despair. The root cause of my unhappiness. My husband Jack. Our paths crossed in the workplace, and after 2 years of courtship, we exchanged vows. Jack, 3 years my senior, possessed a reserved demeanor, and we weren't exactly the epitome of affectionate partners. Nonetheless, I was drawn to his steadfast sense of self and mature demeanor. I envisioned a tranquil, content life together. That was my hope, at least. Once we exchanged vows, Jack's demeanor underwent a stark transformation. Frankly put, he adopted a patriarchal stance. I came to this realization mere days into our marriage. At Jack's behest, I embraced the role of a full-time homemaker, throwing myself into domestic duties from the onset of our union. On that particular evening, I diligently prepared dinner, eagerly awaiting Jack's return. He arrived home a tad after 7 p.m. Upon surveying the meal laid out before him, his voice erupted with dissatisfaction. "What's this?" he barked. "It's a casserole with salad and a side of soup," I responded hesitantly. "Don't toy with me. If you're catering to your weary husband, it ought to be a lavish spread. Your past successes are no excuse. How can you falter at such basic tasks? You're utterly incompetent as a woman. Utterly." "You could have said that differently," I murmur, my troubled expression met with Jack's glare. Suddenly, he hurls the dish of salad to the floor. A startled scream escapes my lips. "What?" "It's because you, as my wife, can't even manage the basics, isn't it?" Jack interjects sharply. I made my expectations clear. There's no need to disrespect the food like that. Shut up. Instead of making excuses, use that deficient brain of yours to consider how to better fulfill your role as my wife, you fool. It's the first time I've been called that. Sure, I've faced reprimands from my parents, arguments with my brother and friends, but never have I been subjected to such cruelty, especially from the man I love. It's only been a few days since our wedding. I never imagined he would react so harshly over a dinner choice. Nevertheless, as a housewife, I remain financially reliant on him. I can't risk defying my husband. As a newlywed, my utmost desire is to avoid upsetting him. Since that incident, I've been tiptoeing around him, careful not to trigger his anger. I meticulously ironed every piece of laundry, prepared the simplest of meals like loaded potato soup, and seasoned side dishes to perfection. Not a single hair must be left on the floor. Under this constant pressure, my nerves fray. Yet his patriarchal control only tightens. "There's a crease in this shirt sleeve. Can't you see?" he berates. "I am sorry. I'll iron it right away," I stammer. "I'm already running late for work." "You're always so slow," he complains. "I'll hurry," I assure him. "You won't have time. You're insufferable in the morning." "How much more do you want to upset me, you incompetent woman?" he snaps. "I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry. I apologize, my voice trembling." Whenever I erred, I instinctively lowered my head in apology, a practice enforced by my husband. Depending on the gravity of my mistake, the depth of my contrition varied. Sometimes a mere bow would suffice for forgiveness, but for more serious transgressions, kneeling was required. And in moments of repeated mistakes, he would ominously present me with a completed divorce document. It's astonishing how quickly one can become accustomed to such treatment. After a year of enduring this cycle, I began to internalize a sense of utter worthlessness. Yet I couldn't bear the thought of divorce, especially in my current state of unemployment. I couldn't shatter my parents' joy over our marriage by admitting to such a failure. especially not after such a short time. The prospect of enduring perpetual reprimand from my husband filled me with despair for the future. As usual, I was in the midst of preparing dinner, anticipating his return. My daily ritual involved completing the meal by 7 p.m., ensuring it was ready for him to enjoy whenever he arrived. The moment the front door creaked open, I began setting the table. If I failed to finish before he sat down, it would inevitably lead to another round of apologies. Typically, my husband would take his seat in silence, but on this particular day, something felt different. As he loosened his tie, he initiated a conversation. "Mary, we're moving to my parents' house this weekend." I paused, puzzled. "Your parents' house? You mean your mother's place?" He nodded. "Yes, that's correct." "Have everything packed by then?" I couldn't help but inquire, "Why the sudden change, Jack? You've always been adamant about not returning to your parents' house." His icy stare silenced my probing, and after a momentary pause, he spoke. "My mother had a fall, and living independently has become too challenging for her." My concern surged. "We should go to her immediately. She's been in the hospital for a week. We'll move once she's discharged this weekend," he explained. "I understand now," I replied quietly. "But why the sudden change? You've always resisted returning to your parents' home." "Can you guess why?" he remarked with a chilling edge. "I can't deny the allure of potential inheritance," he confessed, his tone betraying a hint of satisfaction. "You see, my father was an ordinary man, but my mother's family is wealthy. She has a substantial amount of money." "What does that have to do with her current situation?" I questioned. His lips curled into a calculating smile. "If I play the devoted son during this ordeal, perhaps I'll be in line for a significant inheritance. If we, as a couple, rush to her side, I'm confident she'll be inclined to bestow the entire inheritance upon us." "Isn't that a bit disrespectful?" I dared to question. "Shut up. You're being supported by me, so just listen quietly," he retorted sharply. "I am sorry," I stammered, cowed by his outburst. The air was thick with tension as his words echoed in the room, leaving me feeling small and powerless. Instinctively, I offered my usual apology. With a triumphant air, he declared, "Listen, from now on, you'll be taking care of my mother. You'll work as a maid in my parents' house for the rest of your life." I faltered at his words. Is that what you mean?" I ventured to ask, but he cut me off sharply. "Don't argue. Who do you think is providing for your current lifestyle? It's all thanks to me, isn't it? Depending on how well you care for my mother, our inheritance could be affected. So don't neglect your duties. Understand?" Pressured to respond, I murmured softly, "Yes." His satisfaction evident, he flashed a smug smile before beginning his meal. Forcing me into the role of caregiver solely for the sake of his mother's inheritance, my husband doesn't regard me as his wife. To him, I'm merely a housemaid. Though I was aware of this truth, hearing it explicitly was a jolt to my senses. Yet I lacked the courage to challenge him. In a way, I felt as though I had been brainwashed, my own aspirations erased. The following day, following my husband's orders, I started packing our belongings. A week later, as directed by him, we relocated to my mother-in-law's residence, coinciding with her discharge from the hospital. On the day of her discharge, Jack didn't show up at the hospital, citing work obligations. Consequently, I was the one accompanying my mother-in-law home. During our journey back, she offered an apology. "Mary, I'm truly sorry. It's because of me that you're going through all of this. Don't worry about it. As a housewife, if I can lend you support while being at home, then nothing could be more important." I reassured her. "Thank you. But are you not bothered by how sudden this all is?" she inquired. "Well, the packing was a bit rushed, I suppose," I admitted. "I can imagine. Even I was taken aback by Jack's decision to move in with us. I wonder what prompted him to do this so abruptly." "Mary, have you heard anything?" she pressed. "No, I haven't heard anything," I replied softly. It wasn't surprising that my mother-in-law found the situation peculiar. Jack had always harbored a dislike for her, often expressing his grievances with remarks like, "She's a nuisance and I'd rather not be around her." Yet he swiftly moved in with her upon her hospitalization, driven by the prospect of her inheritance. To be honest, I was startled by Jack's sudden change in behavior. However, I couldn't bring myself to disclose the truth to my mother-in-law. Striving to maintain composure, I concealed my inner turmoil. Thus began my life as a caregiver, navigating the unfamiliar responsibilities alongside the household chores in the spacious family home. Even amidst our return to his parents' residence, Jack's domineering demeanor remained unchanged, subjecting me to verbal abuse almost daily. In my mother-in-law's absence, there was no respite from the demands of housekeeping and caregiving, and my days were consumed with ceaseless activity from dawn till dusk. This routine persisted for about a month until one day, while I was attending to my mother-in-law's needs, she expressed her concern. "Mary, have you lost weight again?" "No, no, please don't worry about it, Mother," I reassured her. "Are you certain? I noticed the same thing when you first moved in. You seemed much more fatigued compared to when you were newlywed," she remarked. She was correct. Over the course of our year and a half of marriage, I had shed 15 pounds. It wasn't due to skipping meals, but rather a diminished appetite and a lack of leisurely dining time. My mother-in-law discerned the changes in me, ones that even Jack hadn't noticed. Simply that acknowledgement eased some of my loneliness. Wanting to alleviate her concerns, I mustered a smile. "Don't fret over me, Mother. Just sharing these conversations with you each day brings me joy." "Mary, let's steer away from this gloomy talk. Shall I attend to your other hand, Mother?" I suggested, attempting to lighten the mood. "Oh yes, please," she responded. Just as I began to assist her, my phone abruptly rang. "It seems to be Jack," my mother-in-law observed, causing my body to stiffen. Jack insisted I answer his calls promptly. However, with a wet towel in hand, I couldn't respond immediately. Yet I knew any delay would provoke his anger. Utilizing my elbow, I managed to tap the answer button and switched the call to speaker. "Hello," I greeted hesitantly. Instantly, a barrage of angry shouts erupted from the other end of the line. "Hey, don't play games. Why did you answer immediately?" Jack demanded furiously. I'm sorry. I was a bit preoccupied," I stammered, bracing myself for his wrath. "What? A maid should answer on the first ring. But I was occupied and couldn't," I explained. "Didn't I always tell you not to talk back? You're so frustrating. Why are you so incapable?" Jack's voice seethed with anger. I'm sorry," I apologized meekly. "Are you ensuring the old lady is properly cared for? The inheritance hinges on your performance. Do you understand?" he pressed. Being humiliated in front of my mother-in-law filled me with shame. Jack continued to hurl insults, branding me incompetent and bothersome, before abruptly ending the call. Following Jack's tirade, a weighty silence engulfed the room. It was my mother-in-law who broke it. "Mary, was that Jack? Does he always speak to you like that?" Yes, but it's my fault. I am incompetent," I admitted quietly. "What nonsense is that? You're such a kind and wonderful girl, Mary," she reassured me with sincerity. "Mom, I can't ignore this, Mary. It's time to take a stand." "Huh." My mother-in-law then proposed a plan. Following her lead, I gathered all of Jack's belongings and deposited them in the yard before locking the front door. Together, we awaited Jack's return. Several hours passed before we heard noises from the entrance. It was likely Jack, but the locked door remained impassable. Ignoring the intercom's persistent chimes, I followed my mother-in-law's instructions. Eventually, my phone began to ring. It was Jack. Switching the call to speaker, I answered, "Hello." He began shouting immediately, "Hey, stop playing games. Open the front door this instant." "I can't do that." "What? What do you mean?" "This is your mother's directive." Unable to grasp the situation, he continued to shout, "Stop messing around and open it now." In response, my mother-in-law's voice rang out, cold and resolute. "The one who's messing around here is you, you fool." "Mom, I always knew you were distant, but I never imagined you would treat your wife like this." "No, that's not. I sensed something was amiss when you suddenly moved in to exploit your wife and rely on inheritance. How could you lead such a disgraceful existence?" my mother-in-law admonished. "No, that's not true," Jack protested. "What's not true?" "I have no intention of leaving you any inheritance. If you understand, get lost. This is my house. You will never be allowed back in." Flustered by my mother-in-law's accusations, Jack began pounding on the door. Through the phone, I could hear him pleading, "Please, do something. I have an ally in my mother-in-law. I won't be manipulated any longer," I declared with resolve. Addressing Jack firmly over the phone, I stated, "I want a divorce. I can't continue with you any longer." "What? What are you saying?" he exclaimed in disbelief. "Enough. I refuse to remain married to a man like you any longer. I refuse to squander my life. I refuse to sacrifice my own happiness for yours, I declared resolutely. D. Don't be ridiculous. You can't live without me, Jack protested. There's nothing I can't handle. No matter how difficult it may be, it's preferable to being with you. I will conquer any obstacle. I no longer require your presence in my life. I refuse to tolerate garbage like you, I retorted firmly. With that, I abruptly ended the call and blocked his number. His shouts could be heard from outside, eventually turning into cries of despair. My mother-in-law reported his disturbance to the authorities. Due to his disruptive behavior, he was escorted away by the police. Using the divorce papers he had previously provided, I initiated formal proceedings to end our marriage. Additionally, I pursued legal action against him for the mental and physical anguish he had caused me. With my mother-in-law's support as a witness, the legal proceedings progressed smoothly. After compensating me with a lump sum, Jack's savings were depleted. Furthermore, his employment was terminated by his company upon discovering his police record, relegating him to a lower position. Naturally, my mother-in-law declined to leave her inheritance to Jack. After consulting with a lawyer and honoring my mother-in-law's wish to entrust everything to me, it was agreed that she would transfer approximately $1 million to me annually. I continue to provide care for my mother-in-law in her home. It's the least I can do for her now. Mary, I'm deeply sorry for always burdening you. Even after divorcing Jack, you're still here caring for me. Why do you say that, Mom? I should be the one thanking you. Truly, I feel blessed to have a daughter like you. The feeling is mutual. Let's continue to support each other, all right? My life alongside my mother-in-law is now filled with more joy than I could have imagined. I'll strive to do everything within my power for her until the end of her days.